Hi, everybody. When Maggie, and thank you, Maggie, for invited me to give this brief presentation, I told her, "Are you sure?" Because my research looks at anything but language. So we thought, okay, yes, this could be a provocation instead. So it's not going to be a contribution on who learns, teaches, and uses languages, but it's a provocation that doesn't deal with language, and let's see if you can find anything relevant for you in this. But I think there is something that can link that, because it's the two ends that we use language and that people teach language and that people learn language is for communication. Communication broadly conceived in terms of shaping, expressing identity, not just transactional, informational, purely shaping and expressing identities, establishing and negotiating common grounds, managing positioning, etc. I conceive that in general terms. So I don't need to, I don't need to define what multimodality means to you, but I do my research in multimodality. And my focus is on how people make meaning in cross, inter, and transcultural environments. I looked at in face-to-face interaction, in digital environments, and in space and place. And I'll give you two examples taken out of two research projects that I took part in to give you an idea of what I do and how I think it could be provocatorily relevant to today. So one is a project, Leads Voices Communicating Superdiversity in the Market. It's an interdisciplinary project that I took part in together with Janet Watson and other colleagues at the university that looked at how people communicate in Kyrgyz market. That is a widely socio-culturally and linguistically diverse environment. So to give you one data example, this is a butcher shop that's been owned for generations by a Yorkshire butcher family. And in the butcher window there's a lucky cat. And the butcher, when interviewed, told us that the lucky cat, he had placed the lucky cat there to attract, to speak to Chinese customers, because in his experience, Chinese customers are those that buy belly pork, and he started to supply belly pork for them. And so he placed the lucky cat just opposite, just in front of the belly pork. So the lucky cat is used non-language, because he can't speak Mandarin or he can't write in Chinese. He's used that as a focusing device to attract a special niche of migrant customers, and in positioning that towards close to the belly cat is used it dixically to indicate, to focus the attention towards the belly cat, the belly pork. There's more, because in that shop there's also posters that you can see there in the customer area, just below my eye level. Normally butchers also in that market have these posters. They're quite common posters, but they have at their back as purely decorational stuff. When the butcher was asked, how do you deal with communication with people that don't speak English? And he says, oh, it's fairly easy. There's a lot of gesturing, there's a lot of pointing. We normally try to infer, we got experience of what they want. And if that doesn't work, we bring them to the posters and ask them to indicate that. So the posters were there as a visual aid to retrieve information, to create shared learning, so that the butcher learn what that customer wants for the next time. And maybe also there's some language learning in that too, in exchanging different words or how you name that piece of meat. But what the point here is that this butcher has shaped his built environment, his shop deployment, to suit multilingual multilingually diverse population, and to facilitate communication in that at different levels, which is something we could reflect on in how we should shape our public spaces, because these observations came from me when I went to the job center here, just arrived in Leeds, to apply after my application for the national insurance number. And that job center could learn a lot from this butcher on how to create an environment through layout, visual supports and materials, but also managing of audio or of speech, etc., to facilitate communication among people that have different that do not share the same linguistic resources. A second project that I've taken part with Ruth Swanik from the School of Education, which you already know, instead looks at deaf-hearing face-to-face interaction in context, again, where we termed codified resources are little shared, both either speech or sign language. So in this case, the adult is the mother of the little girl with the yellow shirt. The mother is a hearing adult. She speaks Lithuanian. She's from Lithuanian origins. At that time, she started to learn to sign. The daughter is deaf, has a cochlear implant, had it recently, so she can't really, we were not confident that she could at that time understand her mother talking. The friend with the blue dress, she's also deaf, had a cochlear implant implanted earlier, so she can hear better, but she's from Roma, Slovakian origin, so she can't understand Lithuanian. The thing is that Ruth brought to me this video with 2-hour session recording, and these three do amazing stuff. They manage to understand each other at so many different levels, not just informationally and transactionally, but to express disagreement, to manage and negotiate agreement, to position themselves to that through a series of communicative practices that do not use codified resources in either speech or sign language, but through gesturing, the use of gaze, the use of body posture, and managing of turn-taking. And yes, I'm done. This is the last slide. So, to come back to my provocation is, if the end is communication, I give it to you. Shouldn't be concerned of how to facilitate that beyond language. Even language teachers, obviously the focus is language, but if communication is more than language, we should be more and more concerned about how you can shape communicative practices and strategies and principles beyond language to empower language learners when linguistic resources are not there in our multilingual societies. That's it, sorry.